Hi there and welcome to the Tour Guides Travel Guides. My name is Rich Jones, professional tour guide and therefore completely trustworthy. Now today we find ourselves in this south central section of England, in this area of outstanding natural beauty called the Cotswolds. Now, you guys from overseas, if you have that mental perception of this green and pleasant land of ours, real England, merry old England, then this pretty much sums it up. The Cotswolds, rolling countryside, patchwork quilt effect of the field, beautiful little honey-coloured limestone villages, churches, cottages, romance, livestock, and of course sheep. The woolen industry was really started here. The Cotswolds itself, it's an old English word. It comes from the Anglo-Saxon cots, where the sheep pens, we'll be seeing hundreds of them on our journey through. The wolds, what you're looking at really, gently rolling hills. So Cotswolds, the sheep pens in the gently rolling hills. Now, what we would like to do, as my colleague and cameraman Greg and myself would like to show you, is really how we would recommend you to see the Cotswolds in all their glory. Now, there are many tour companies that will bring you here on coaches and that sort of thing, but you'll only get snippets. The way to do this is come up for the weekend. Make it a long weekend in the car. Get out there. It's not so bad driving over here. Get a physical map, plot out your routes, or maybe you want to follow the route that we're going to show you. But the idea is to get in the car and get out where the buses can't go. Absorb real England. Make a weekend of it. Find yourself a classic English pub with accommodation. Come up on the Friday night, have a good meal. Start early on the Saturday morning. Fortify yourself with a great big English breakfast. And then get out there and explore. Make a whole day of it. And then come back, have a good meal, and maybe a couple of pints of famous foaming English ale. That's the way to do it. So the idea is this, that Greg and I are probably going to plot down to the southern section of the Cotswolds, just outside the City of Dreaming Spires of Oxford, because down there is a good place to start, and particularly a lovely little village called Bladen, because there's some amazing stuff to see down there. And stay with us for a couple of days. Anyway, let's go and have a look. Hi there, well we've decided to start our Cotswold adventure here in the village of Bladon, the southern section of the Cotswolds, just a few miles north of the City of Dreaming Spires, that is Oxford. We find ourselves here, outside this rather lovely, typical Cotswold church that is called St Martin's. Now there is actually a reason we're here, this simple little church. I'll show you something. Okay, and the reason we're here is this, very simple grave. Winston Leonard Spencer Churchill, 1874 to 1965, shared with his beloved wife Clementine. Yeah, very simple surrounding for the greatest Briton of all time, as voted by us, the general public of Great Britain, a few years ago now, but very simple indeed. This is actually the direct family plot for the Churchill family. In fact, Jenny Randolph Churchill, Jenny Jerome, the American lady's buried just behind him actually. That's very nice. But here's the story that in his final days, in the 1964, 1960, beginning of 65, allegedly the story goes that he was asked by his advisors, look Mr Churchill, where would you like to be buried? We can just about find room for you in Westminster Abbey, or maybe more befittingly at St Paul's Cathedral for military heroes. And he just looked at me, don't be ridiculous, there's far too many people I couldn't possibly get along with in there. So he's decided here, because just a few miles up the road is his beloved Blenheim Palace, where in fact he was born, so certain symmetries there is quite nice. Born at Blenheim, about a mile or so up the road, and rested here at his beloved Bladen, St Martin's Church. Now what I would like to do is actually take you inside, because there's something really quite special in there as well. Follow me. The reason we brought you inside the church is this magnificent brand new stained glass window, unveiled June last year, 2015, by Her Royal Highness Duchess of Cornwall, Camilla herself. and it commemorates the 50th anniversary of the death of Sir Winston Churchill, the greatest Briton, as voted by us, the general public. And it really is a thing of stunning beauty, actually. At the very top, you've got Winston Churchill's coat of arms, and you'll see the blue surround with the Honi soit qui mal y pense. That's the motto to the Knights of the Guard, to the most senior heraldic knights of the Empire. On the left-hand side, you have St. Martin of Tours, who was a Christian convert. He was once a Roman soldier and converted to Christianity. On the right is St. Alban, who was also a Roman soldier, lived in the 4th century, and he was actually became the first English Christian martyr. But if you look closely, if you come here, you'll see all little tiny images around the side, all kind of related to Churchill himself. I'm thinking, kind of, there's a Spitfire here, and there he is smoking his cigar, and this one here is motor car, and it's all traced with images of Churchill himself and his famous quotes and his favourite aircraft and that thing. But it really is a beautiful thing, just unveiled last year. The church, and we really wanted you to see that. So if you do come to this church, really make a point of coming down here. But in itself, a very, very nice, typical Cotswold church, St. Martin's, Bladen. All right, so we decided to bring you in here to the Blenheim estate. Now, Winston Churchill's parents, this American socialite Jenny Jerome, and of course Randolph Churchill, the younger brother to the 8th Duke of Marlborough. Now, it's said that when Jenny first arrived here, she came through Lady Sarah's gateway, just at the end of the drive there. She came into the park, and she's quoted as saying, "And then, as we entered the gateway, my eyes fell upon the loveliest view in England." Well, I don't think you can actually argue with that, really, can you? Looking across the ornamental lake there, at the ceremonial bridge. And then, of course, we come on round to the palace itself. Blenheim Palace, birthplace of the greatest Briton of them all, Sir Winston Churchill. Now listen, this is well worth a visit. You'd need probably all day here. There's over 1,200 acres of parklands to explore. The palace itself, I mean, it's a labyrinth of opulence and beauty. It was started in 1704. The background of it, very briefly, is that one of our greatest military commanders was John Churchill, a great friend of the Queen Anne at the time, and he won this great military victory at the Battle of Blenheim over in Europe in the Spanish Wars of Spanish Succession. That's a story for another day. But anyway, as a gift from a grateful nation and Queen, he was bequeathed the royal estate here at Woodstock, and this huge amount of acreage and a vast amount of money. I think it was about £300,000 back in the day. I think whatever the equivalent of that is, it's something ridiculous, like 85 million or something along those, about a fortune, king's ransom. Anyway, it's decided to build this palace. Started in 1704, finished in 1726, and became the seat of the Dukes of Marlborough, because he's also given that dukedom as well. Nowadays, probably known as Britain's most beautiful and opulent palace, but obviously well known as being the birthplace of Sir Winston Churchill. And contrary to popular belief, he wasn't actually born in a broom cupboard. He was actually born in a spare bedroom. He arrived a little earlier to a social function here back in 1875. Come and see it. Blenheim Palace, remarkable. Alright, so we've left Blenheim Palace behind us, bottom of the high street there, just exited through Lady Sarah's gateway, and we've come out now into the lovely little Cotswold town of Woodstock. And it was actually here at Woodstock, just down Brown's Lane, the other side of the estate walls, that there was the original Royal Hunting Lodge that was donated to John Churchill, the first Duke of Marlborough. But today, as you can see, it's a very, very quaint, typical Cotswold market town. Everything you need, really. Of course, the very famous Bear Hotel here on my left, the original coaching in there. You see the coaches rattling in there, the stage coaches rattling in there for weary travellers en route to either Oxford, London or Warwick and Stratford further up the road. But here we are in what was once the original marketplace. Most of these towns and villages grew up around the central market. The big industry here at Woodstock, incidentally, they were known for their glove making. This beautiful building in front of us is actually today the town hall. It dates from 1776. Originally it was all open underneath for the market, today it's the central administration building, the town hall itself, but a beautiful building dating from that classical period of architecture building of the 18th century, very much again in that Palladian style. You'll be able to see that very beautiful porticoed entranceway there and a lovely crest at the top representing the county and the arms of Woodstock itself. Anyway, we've got something else to show you, so you want to follow me. Alright, well, we've walked down to the end of the high street here in Woodstock, but we found this little curio for your amusements. You might find this quite interesting. We're outside the Feathers Hotel, just behind the town hall here in Woodstock, but if you look up above there, you'll be able to see this fairly eroded statue. Causes a bit of curiosity, and now it's said to be of the Virgin Mary. Now, if we go back to the 1600s, during the Civil War, all evidence of Catholicism was generally frowned upon and to be eradicated. So to kind of hide and preserve that culture, what a lot of the people would do, the Catholics would do, would be to incorporate idols and iconography actually into the building structure itself, just to preserve them there. But that's quite neat, that. So Catholic symbolism from the 17th century outside the Feathers Hotel here in the lovely market town of Woodstock. Alright, well, we've got a real gem for you here, down by the side of the busy Windrush River. That's one of the two of the main rivers that run through the Cotswolds. The other one's the Evenloe, which we'll encounter at some point on our travels. But we're advised to come down here by Graham, our trusty barman at the Bull at Burford. He said, look, if you're going to send people out of the Cotswolds, you've got to go and see Minster Lovell. So we're going to go explore that moment. We're here by the Swan Hotel, which is quite a decent place to maybe plot up for the weekend. But all right, so without further ado, we're going to take a stroll up the main street here at Minster Lovell. But the top end, we're going to find the church, St Kenelm's Church, and the remains of Minster Lovell Hall. All right, well, let's have a look. See here. Really typical Cotswold cottages there. Look at that beautiful bit of thatch work there. I'll be getting into a bit more thatch detail further on to the tour, but I will point out, beautiful, just long street taken all the way up to the church there. And these typical Cotswold cottages. Looking at the limestone, it's all with honey-coloured limestone that I was talking about early on. It's an oolitic limestone, synonymous with this area of the Cotswolds. We just call it Cotswold stone, but it's known for its just like rich, creamy colour. Okay, so we've just come to the end of the village, and we've come across the really pretty little St Kenelm's Church. 14th century, this one's an old one. The origins actually go back to the 12th century, but this church was built, as I say, in the 15th century there, by William Lovell, 7th Baron Lovell, hence Minster Lovell. And the origins of the words Minster come from the religious thing, monasteries and that sort of thing. So Minster Lovell, named after the famous Lovell family, but a quite beautiful little church there, dating from the 1400s. All right, so we've actually moved on now from Minster Lovell. Loved that visit. And we're down at the little village of Swinbrook. In fact, there is the Swinbrook over here there, the Swinebrook. Pigs would have been watered here at some point back in the olden days when your livestock would have been centred around the village green. Now, the reason we stopped here, not only is it a particularly pretty little village, I'll just get Greg to pan across here again, these beautiful limestone cottages, the slate roofs there, mossy roofs, but actually there's a really interesting church here, which you can probably just about make out, just the square tower there with the flag flying above the tower, the white background and the red cross, which is the flag of St George, the patron saint of England, and that is the flag of England. Okay, so here we are at St Mary's Swinbrook. Again, a lovely little church dating from the 14th century. But before we go on inside, we wanted to show you this. It's come as a bit of a surprise. 4 gravestones here. Now, back at the beginning of the 20th century, there was a family called the Mitfords who had 6 daughters, all attractive girls, but they were kind of the leading socialites at the time, and essentially they invented celebrity. They're buried here, for example, Nancy Mitford, the authoress, Unity Mitford, and this one over here, Diana Moseley, née Mitford. She was married to a man called Oswald Moseley, who was the founder of the British Fascist Party, essentially the British Nazi Party, if you like. Had a lot of dealings, particularly Diana was fascinated with all things associated with the Third Reich. Very controversial people indeed, but buried here at St Mary's, Swinbrook. We're going to go in and have a look here because I've got some more stuff to show you. All right, follow me. Okay, so we've actually come inside St Mary's now, and a few more bits and pieces to see, but you might find this interesting if you do come in here. Lovely, simple stained glass window, but it tells a story of an actual event that happened here relatively recently. If we read the inscription here, that a German landmine with a parachute attached was dropped in a field just between here and the river at 9:20 in the evening of the 26th of September 1940, World War II, right? The explosion shattered all the windows, removed the roof tiles and shook down plaster throughout the church. All adjacent houses suffered as well, but thankfully no one was hurt. And this inscription was placed here in thankfulness to God for our merciful deliverance, and in memory of William Grenville Boyd, the vicar here between 1938 and 1941, who collected and began arranging all the old glass from the original windows to put this back together. I think that's beautiful, really is. All right, well, the one thing we really did want to show you here in this very small, simple church, St Mary's, Swinbrook, is this monument to the original landowners here, the Fetty Place family, senior landowners from 14th century. But this is their family memorial, and I've never seen anything like it. I mean, it's the strangest thing you've ever seen. All this kind of lying on the sides in a somewhat relaxed pose, and then this almost somewhat I'd classify as a camp position on the tomb. But it's something of magnificence. I mean, they really had obviously a huge amount of money, but it really is quite simply the strangest thing I've ever seen in my life before. But I thought you want to show you that one actually. But their crest and their coat of arms, in fact, is Sir Edmund Fetty Place, Baronet, lying up, reclining at the top there. You'll be able to see the red background. I can focus in on that with the white chevrons. But in the top left-hand corner, you'll see the white background with the red hand of Ulster, now part of Northern Ireland. But that would probably indicate that the Fetty Place families were sort of tenant landlords, probably donated land over there by Queen Elizabeth I, I would suspect. So yeah, the Fetty Place monument, remarkable. Anyway, some other cool stuff to show you here. I wasn't expecting to find this. Just behind me there's one, but if I can get Greg to maybe just come around slightly here, they're absolutely beautiful misery chords. For example, here they're actually seats that drop down, but what would happen during the original service of the choristers or the priests were not allowed to sit down. They had to stand at all times. That little ledge there just to help them take a little bit of weight off, the pressure. But all these individual carvings. Now, I'll be honest with you that it's not great quality, I'll be honest, but the age of them, they're 15th century, so these are seriously old pieces of wood. So really wonderful to find them just stacked up against the wall. St Mary's, Swinbrook. So yeah, 15th century misery chords. Fantastic. I wasn't expecting to find that. St Mary's, Swinbrook. All right, well, we're just about to leave St Mary's, Swinbrook, but I couldn't leave without showing you these things here. These are very fine, sizable tombs, but distinctive in this area because they are images of the Woolstacks, the Woolstacks. So these people were obviously associated with the woolen industry, judging by the size of them. Merchants, fairly affluent merchants as well, but we'll probably see more of these on our travels. But here's one over here. I can't read the name, it's weathered away, but you'll see the skull, indicating the mortality sort of thing. But just a quick one before we move on. I mean, the woolen industry, incredibly important to the Cotswolds, incredibly important to the country actually. We go back to Roman times, so AD 43 and onwards, that it was actually the Romans that introduced the sheep to these islands, and because the climate was so temperate, the lush green grass, the sheep thrive, so much so really from sort of medieval times through to 18th and 19th century. All right, so we've moved on down to Bibury, beautiful Bibury. It was termed the most beautiful village in England by the great poet and artist certain William Morris. Now, it's pretty bold words indeed for Mr. Morris, because considering here in the Cotswolds we are in probably one of the most beautiful parts of the country, which is actually spoilt with beautiful villages. However, I think you will agree with me, that's pretty special over there. That's Arlington Row. They are 17th century, early 17th century weavers' cottages. Now, we're here in Bibury alongside the River Colne. Formerly goes back to Anglo-Saxon times, an ancient colony here. But again, these villages, like so many around here, grew up around the woolen industry. Just the other side of the river, we have this little area here of wetland, which is known as Wrack Island. Now, today it is a wildlife sanctuary for a lot of the local flora, fauna, and particularly bird life indigenous to the Cotswolds area. But back really from medieval times, pretty much to 18th century, Wrack Island got its name from. But this is where they used to dry out on racks the woolen fleeces that had been washed by the washerwomen here in the running waters of the Colne River, and then be sent to the fullers and then eventually to the weavers in the cottage over there. Now, these cottages here still occupied today, not by weavers, but privately owned. But I mean, it's stunningly beautiful. Arlington Row here in Bibury. Now, we do have, if I can get Greg maybe just to pan round behind us, there are some, for your information, because bearing in mind we're out in the Cotswolds, grab the bathrooms wherever you can. Restrooms, we've got some over here. Now, my mission to find free restrooms in the Cotswolds is still an ongoing mission. However, these are fairly reasonable. Just letting the traffic go past. They will charge you 20 pence, so it's good value, 20p for a pee in the Cotswolds. Okay, now I'll let you into a little secret. It's a bit cheeky, this one, but it's if a few of you and you want to use the restrooms, take one of your 20 pence coins, first one goes in, uses the restroom, comes out, keep your foot on the door to let the other one get through it, and so on, so forth and so forth. You get what I'm saying? So that's the way to save it. That's the way I do it. Okay, so the restroom's over there. Now I'm just going to move slightly around this way. I'm just going to get Greg to pan over. You see the lady taking a bicycle away there. She's just come out of the William Morris tea rooms. So if you want a nice little cup of tea and a slice of cake, William Morris tea rooms. There's a guest house there as well, not actually open at the minute. We've got the post office for your postcards and souvenirs. And it brings us now, gets a nice view of the bridge that would take you across to Wrack Island and across further over to the Weavers' cottages there, Arlington Row. So we're going to move on over to the main village itself and have a look at the church, but I thought we'd bring you down here first. Stunning! Okay, so behind me we've got St Mary the Virgin Church here in Bibury. Fine example of a 17th century Cotswold woolen church. The origins of this, again Saxon, go way back. Unfortunately not open today, but if you do come back in the summer months you should get access to the main church itself, and there is actually some of the original Saxon stonework inside. Referring to the woolen churches as we go on this journey through the Cotswolds, I'll be talking more and more about this, but most of these churches were founded on the back of the woolen industry. A lot of the rich landowners would give something back to the community, more often not some kind of church. For the community, but also as a kind of little fast track for themselves to get up to heaven, get into God's good books. But two fairly distinctive styles of church here in the Cotswolds. I'll be pointing these out as I say as we go around. But this is the short, squat, square stone tower up above. The other type we'll see more of are the more sharp pinnacle spires. Interesting enough, I think if Greg's just panning in, actually, you'll be able to see the down spout pipes there. You see, and above them you see what we're calling the gargoyles there. Bit eroded to say the least. We'll see more of these again, but I'm not sure if you're aware of this, the two types of decor. You've got the gargoyles and the grotesques, and how we kind of remember the gargoyles is almost like gargling away there. They actually had a purpose. You see quite clearly, good example there, that was actually to get the rainwater off the roof there and into the downspouts, where the grotesques, again we'll show you more of these, are just purely for decorative period. So St Mary the Virgin Church here in Bibury. Alright, so welcome to Burford, probably one of my favourite of the Cotswolds towns. Busy place actually. We find ourselves on the corner of Sheep Street, so if you find yourself here, well worth a look down there. Some really interesting buildings, different styles of architecture. Looking further up the hill, you see, busy here. This was once upon a time the major coaching route, mail routes from the Midlands en route to London, but a nice old town now, very busy. Quite an interesting eclectic mix of architectural styles. You probably see the very fine Georgian building there on English oak furniture next door to probably 17th century, next to almost early 17th century building there. In fact, most of these buildings were once upon a time were in fact coaching inns. I would draw your attention to the famous Bull Hotel, the Bull at Burford, and the archway over there. In fact, this is where myself and the camera are staying. Burford really is an excellent place to actually use as your base camp for spending a couple of days in the Cotswolds. In fact, highly recommend the Bull indeed. In fact, Stow, we'll see a bit later on, is another place we'd highly recommend. But we've got some fine views down the other end of the high street. We'll see the sun glinting on the Cotswold stone there and the gently rolling landscape way off in the distance. But Burford, it's about hotels, it's about sleepy streets, it's about coffee shops, and it's very much about antiques, but well worth a visit. So we've moved off the main high street of Burford there, a little bit quiet here, into Church Lane, en route to see John the Baptist Church, a must here in Burford. Just want to draw your attention to this actually, is Burford Grammar School, still operational today, but I just wanted to, that founded 1571, 16th century, it's been a school since all that time. Beautiful building. In fact, our friend Graham, the barman at our favourite pub, this is actually where he went to school. Incidentally, FYI, just around the corner on the high street there, next door to the tourist information, are the public restrooms, and yet again, of course, 20p for a pee. So you know the rules that this by now, don't you? Put one in and hold the door open for the others. Alright, we'll see you down here. Alright, well these are really lovely. Some of the oldest buildings in Burford. These date from the 1400s, 15th century. These are the Worcester Almshouses, and still used for that particular purpose today. So the Worcester Almshouses, just off Church Lane here in Burford. Alright, well this is great. We're inside the wonderful St John the Baptist Church in Burford, and I'm not exaggerating here guys, this really is my favourite church in the Cotswolds. There's just so much cool stuff in here. Wonderful church dating back to Saxon times, the majority of the building probably from the 16th century, but first thing I really wanted to share with you is a must-see. I mean, what I'm saying to you, without any exaggeration, if you come into Burford, you have to come here. The first thing I want to talk about is the original font right here. Now, it was lead-lined. There's a really excellent story with this. Now, in the 17th century, I'll get a bit more into this later on, but there was the English Civil War, King Charles I against Oliver Cromwell, king versus Parliament, basically. In 1649, at the end of it, Oliver Cromwell had turned his attention to Ireland, but his troops were sick of his tyranny. They hadn't been paid and they were ill-equipped, so they kind of rebelled. And what actually happened here in this town of Burford, 340 of the troops were incarcerated actually inside this church for 3 nights. And on the 3rd day, 3 of the troopers, as seen as the ringleaders, were taken out into the churchyard and executed. I'll show you that momentarily. But one of those prisoners actually carved his initials into the lead lining of the font, and you can still make it out. I'm just going to get Greg to kind of maybe focus in with it. It's a little bit difficult to see to these days. I mean, I know what I'm looking for. If you can zoom in there, you can see Anthony Sedley, 1649, prisoner. But if you actually look there, they've actually got a print of it there. Can put it actually better viewing for the camera. So Anthony Sedley, 1649, prisoner. One of the levellers, as they were known, the rebels in Cromwell's army. The levellers, it's just an expression that comes that they're trying to take out all levels of society. There's not even in the military, everybody was equal, the levellers. Anyway, more cool stuff to see. Let's just beyond the font, on the left-hand side here is the Edward Harmon tomb, or memorial anyway. It's quite an interesting story here. Just get Greg to follow me down. So Edmund Harmon was actually the personal barber to King Henry VIII. I am indeed. And obviously there were no TVs back in those days, so these represent his children. 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 boys, 2, 4, 6, 7 girls. So I'm sure Mrs. Harmon was a very busy lady indeed. But interesting enough, part of it here, you'll notice, I think Greg can zoom on up here, tomb dating from the 16th century, was put up in 1569. But we can see quite clearly images of New World American Indians. So trade had been already established with South American colonies right there. So that's quite a rare one, but dating back to the 16th century, obviously in business. All right, another really cool thing here in the church, we'll be able to see this beautiful structure here. This is the Lentil family private chapel. The Lentil family were responsible for the establishment of the grammar school, which we saw just outside, but it's quite nice actually. They would have had their own private priest in here. It's actually beautifully decorated as well. If you looking up above there, the decoration, the crown and the keys, I think that represents St. Peter, I think. If memory serves me right, the cross keys. So anything to do with the gates of heaven possibly, anyway. But if we just get Greg to pop in here, this is quite an interesting little thing I want to show you. This little window here, you just see there, this little window. These are known as squints, and the reason would be that the Lentil family, their private priest, would have squinted through to see what the top fellow was doing, to get his mark and his cue on that one, the squint. You know, so the squint, that's where that comes from, but that's quite interesting. Okay, so we're back outside the church now, into this beautiful sunlight. I want to show you this before we head on off. Now, those 3 guys I was telling you about that were dragged outside and executed on the orders of Oliver Cromwell, in fact the rest of the guys who were inside were forced up to the top of the tower there and forced to watch the execution. But there's always been a bit of a question mark about this. You're looking at Cornet Thompson, Corporal Perkins and Private Church. There's always been a bit of question mark about whether they had that influence because such a lowly rank of the lesser troops. But anyway, there's the monument too. All right, so we've moved on from the church. Again, we've got off the high street, nice and quiet. We're on Witney Street, the junction to Gildon Ford, which what originally would have taken you down to the river, the shallow crossing points, so the drovers could in fact still ford the sheep en route to market. So Gildon Ford, Witney Street. Nice quiet street, lots to show you down here. In fact, beautiful building here is the Great House. Classical Palladian style, once home to an incredibly wealthy woolen merchant. Beautiful building, classical architectural style, built from that oolitic limestone we've been referring to. But what I really wanted to show you here was this kind of, we talk about eclectic styles of architecture. The Great House, and then the classic Cotswold pub, the Royal Oak, right there. Okay, so of the many great pubs here in the town of Burford, this is the one we like the best of all, the Royal Oak on Witney Street. Now, if you look above me, the pub sign itself is actually quite interesting, as are most pub signs. Have got a story to tell. Pay attention to them, particularly as you're travelling around the Cotswolds. But the Royal Oak tells the story of a period of time, the English Civil War in the 17th century. Now, what you've got there is 2 soldiers, Roundheads, parliamentarians, Oliver Cromwell's boys, and you've got a picture of a king, the future King Charles II, fighting for his father, King Charles I, hiding in the branches of an oak tree. The legend has it he overnighted in an oak tree, escaped captivity, and from that point forward, the mighty oak tree became an endorsement of royal approval. Okay, so we've moved on to Bourton-on-the-water. Now, before we head on down there, I just wanted to give you a little bit of logistical information first and foremost. If you're coming here by car, more than likely this is where you're going to be sent to the central parking area, which there are hourly fees for the machine there. Make sure you've got plenty of change. We've actually discovered some free restrooms actually. They're clean, serviceable and free. Several of them are next to some kind of catering franchise over there. Again, before we head on down to the village itself, just a word of caution. It is beautiful, but this really is a tourist mecca and can get incredibly busy in the high season. So we've obviously come up here in January, nice and quiet, got the place to ourselves essentially. My best advice to see this place in its finery, obviously during the season, but will become later in the day, maybe early evening, when most of the crowds have disappeared, and you'll have the place yourself and walk around the back streets. But well worth a visit, as we shall now see as we head on down. Okay, so we've moved down to the waterside here at Bourton-on-the-Water, known locally as the Venice of the Cotswolds. You can see the river Windrush flowing sublimely through this beautiful little Cotswold town. Now, as a reminder, really the best time of day to come and see this place, as we have done this evening, is early evening, but particularly during high season, those summer months. This place is inundated with tourists from not only Britain but from around the world as well. But come down here and maybe just pop across the river here, wander the back streets, the many fine pubs, tea rooms, souvenir shops. Just a really lovely place to come, but later on in the day, as I say, to repeat my earlier advice on that one. So this is Bourton-on-the-Water. Alright, so we've just got away from the bustling little streets and restaurants and cafes of Bourton-on-the-Water, the Venice of the Cotswolds. But before we leave town, I really wanted to show you guys this. The lovely St Lawrence's Church, Bourton-on-the-Water. Now, origins old, again, Saxon times. But today in quite an eclectic mix of architectural styles. Now, we're going to be going in shortly and we're going to see a lot of Victorian architecture over there. Central on the outside here, dating from the 17th century, but a really special new addition. I say new addition, it's 18th century, but dating from the 1700s, in a neoclassical style, very popular at the time, Georgian England. Square, squat tower, but really it's not unique, but there are not many about. I can tell you, if you just look up at the top there, the cupola, the domed roof that houses the 8 bells here, that really is rather special indeed. So we'll pop in momentarily. However, if you'd just like to follow me, I wanted to show you this. Greg's probably going to now focus on the doorway we can see just on the tower there, but if you look above it, you're going to see something really quite special. I love it. It's a skull and crossbones just above this beautiful doorway here. Right there, the skull and the crossbones representing our mortality, the inevitability of taxes and death. Fantastic. So there you go. So nice there. I'll see you inside. Okay, this is great. We've actually just dived into St Lawrence's Church here in Bourton-on-the-Water. I just really saw this. I had to show you this, right? More often than not in churches and cathedrals throughout the Church of England, you'll see this in the pulpits. The stand that they rest the Bible on, it's normally an eagle sat on top of a globe, the world. And the reason for that is that the eagle is the emblem of St John the Evangelist, and what he's doing is he's spreading his words and the gospel around the world. But this is a common theme throughout all churches in the Church of England. Here inside the lovely St Lawrence's Church, Bourton-on-the-Water, massively refurbished internally during Victorian times, that's sort of 19th century, down here in the chancel. Very beautiful, very tranquil, spiritual place. St Lawrence's Church, Bourton-on-the-Water. Okay, so we've moved on. We're now just a little short of Stow-on-the-Wold, but we thought we'd dive in here, show you the particularly pretty slaughters, lower and upper slaughter. You see there. Now the name's not quite as macabre as it sounds. It actually comes from the Old English meaning a muddy place. Not so bad today obviously, but we're here along the banks of the River Eye. Very peaceful. There's the ducks chilling out over there. Lots of lovely little bridges crossing the stream here. Fine 17th century manor house, now obviously been turned into the Slaughter, the country inn, so restaurant and hotel. But particularly peaceful, well worth a little stroll along the riverside. We'll be doing that momentarily, but we just come across the way here. Fine houses, Cotswold stone, and of course the beautiful St Mary's Church, Lower Slaughter. And again, another very, very good example of what are these described as woolen churches, founded on the back of the woolen industry. Again, this is quite a distinctive style as well. You might be just so through the trees there, a very, very sharp needle-like spire reaching up to heaven there. So whoever founded this church made a lot of money out of the woolen industry and commissioned the church, and seen the spire going up, get me closer to heaven. So Lower Slaughter. We'll just take a little stroll down the waterside here, because there's some quite interesting stuff to see down here. So, well, as I say, as the evening sunlight comes through now, it'd be remiss of me not to stop here and show you this. It's really particular, but still here in Lower Slaughter. But I mean, look at that, just idyllic, honey-coloured limestone cottages. I mean, isn't that a real bit of England, folks? And we've got the 19th century water fountain here in the middle of the village green, but essentially, quintessentially English view there for you. Okay, so we've come now to the end of Lower Slaughter, the village, because again, I thought you'd probably want to see this. It's well worth a visit, actually. It's the 19th century corn mill, the original water wheel there, and we see the River Eye bubbling through. Once powered that mighty wheel there to grind the corn. But it's a good little visit, actually, when it's open, and just Victorian industrial life, and quite a nice little tea shop in there as well. But a very fine example of a Victorian corn mill here on the River Eye. But just looking at the water here, it's absolutely crystal clear. We'll suspect a little chilly this time of year. Yeah, you probably wouldn't want to drop in there at the end of January, that's for sure. So yeah, that was Lower Slaughter. Alright, so one of the things we kind of recommend you should do as you're driving around this beautiful landscape is maybe just take the odd stop, take the opportunity of a photograph and just enjoy the landscape. I mean, classic Cotswold scene there at the end of the end of the day. And again, you probably see quite clearly this, I keep referring to the patchwork quilt effect of the fields just between Lower and Upper Slaughter. Beautiful little copse of trees there in the field, and really, I would just say, just take a moment to just really enjoy the countryside. Enjoy it. Alright, so it's a very grey morning here in Stow-on-the-Wold, the highest Cotswold town. It's so about Stow-on-the-Wold is Stow-on-the-Wold where the wind blows cold, and I can tell you it certainly is this very morning. Famous as probably one of the oldest market towns in the Cotswolds. There's been a market here since 1107 by royal charter. That's one of the oldest I know of. Today, probably more famous for antiques, art galleries, tea rooms and tourism. Now, we're going to head off and actually look at the original market square shortly. First, we're going to go off and look at St Edward's Church, again another fine example of a wall church. But before we do, a little piece for you here is, now back in the old days, had we been rogues, thieves, drunks, hooligans, or perhaps foreigners of unsavoury appearance, indeed, we'd have probably ended up right here in the village stocks. Right there, back in the day. So foreigners of unsavoury appearance were not welcome at all here in Stow-on-the-Wold. I believe they're a bit more genteel these days. Right, so we've come off the market square behind us. We've actually come into St Edward's Churchyard. A very, very peaceful and tranquil place. But before we go around the other side, I wanted to show you guys this actually. There's two yew trees here that have been standing a mighty, mighty long time, and it's almost as though they've actually blended in with the building itself. They're really, really massive old things. Now, the thing about the yew trees is that it's a traditional planting in most churchyards in Britain, and the reason being is that the animals, wild animals, don't get on with them at all. They can't digest. Some animals actually find them poisonous. So it actually stopped animals digging down and maybe disturbing the grave sites, actually. So that's kind of why we have yew trees in the churchyards. In fact, they used the yew tree to make the famous English longbows that were the scourge of the French back in the 100 Years' War, the great military victories of 1346 Crécy, 1347 Poitiers, and of course the big one 1415 against Agincourt. The English archers just decimated the French knights, made out of yew, very flexible, very strong indeed. Alright, now before we head on out of the churchyard, I really wanted to show you this actually. It's a memorial commemorating the Battle of Stow fought just outside the town walls on 21st of March 1646. It was during this conflict that I've been kind of referring to recently, the English Civil War, which was kind of an interesting period of history because it kind of almost defines who we've become, if you like. Now, in a nutshell, this is what happened. The King, Charles I, declares war on Parliament led by Oliver Cromwell. We go to war. Pretty much divided the country. It divided towns, cities, villages, even divided families. It culminated in 1648, victory for the parliamentarian cause, defeat for King Charles and his royalist cause. He was put on trial for treason, punishable by death. He was found guilty, and the dramatic action in January 1649, he was beheaded in London on a cold, miserable morning, much like today. We then entered this period of time of 11 years called the interregnum between regencies. We were led by Oliver Cromwell as his Lord Protector. He was in control of everything until 1659 when he died, and in 1660 we'd had it enough of his dour, tyrannical, puritanical times. We were desperate for the monarchy to come back. So the son of Charles I was reinstated as King Charles II. He was known as the Merry Monarch. Very merry indeed. 16 children, none with his wife. Now, the battle, going to zoom in here, you'll be able to see this monument, the 1646. Cross swords, indicating a battle, and you'll see here, I think we looked at these yesterday outside the Royal Oak pub, but this was the Roundheads the parliamentarian troops were known as, shaved heads and these round helmets, and here you'll be able to see the little crown representing the royalist cause. So the Battle of Stow, 1646. Alright, I think you're going to like this, guys, actually. Look, just, can you see this alleyway I'm in here? I mean, it's that narrow. I'm not the world's biggest fella, but it's even a bit tight for me. These, we're going to walk backwards a little bit, actually, but behind us, or ahead of me, should I say, behind Greg, my cameraman, we're just coming off Sheep Street, which is kind of that circumvents the market square. But these little alleyways, there's several of them in Stow, all lead to the market square, and what their purpose was back in the day. Huge sheep market here, talking in reference to the importance of the woolen industry here in the Cotswolds, is that what the shepherds would do, they would feed their sheep into these alleyways, huge herds, and obviously they get separated into ones and twos because of the narrowness, the width of these alleyways. And what would happen, like happening now, there would be shepherds waiting here to count the sheep and then actually force them into the sheep pens, into the market square. Now they say, and on a good day back in the day, and I'm probably talking from medieval times, really through to about the 18th century, as many as 20,000 sheep could be sold here in one particular day. Now, these are known locally, these alleyways here, as tunes. I did some research this morning actually with a lovely lady called Sue from the Tourist Information Centre. I once read that these were called in French tuilières, excuse the pronunciation, that comes from sleeve. So the English anglicised version of that is tunes. But several of these running off into the market square, but originally had a purpose of filtering the sheep into the pens here at Stow Market. Okay, so back in the market square, actually here at the market cross. As I said earlier on, that there's been a market here since the 12th century, 1107 I think the charter's from. But just to finish that story off about the English Civil War, again another plaque here commemorating the events of 21st of March 1646, which was a massive victory for Cromwell and the parliamentarian cause, and this was really the beginning of the end, really, of the royalist cause. Steady decline for the royalist fortunes, and They say that here it's saying that the 200 royalists were slaughtered here in the market square, and over 1,500 were imprisoned in St Edward's Church. In fact, we come around just looking at these beautiful buildings. There's a road behind us that's called Digbeth Street that takes us essentially out of town on a slight hill. But it's referred to this day as actually Blood Alley, and there's a bit of a legend here that says that the blood flowing down from the market square, because essentially this was used as the field hospital here, so much blood was running down that street. They actually say the ducks were actually floating down Digbeth Street on the tide of blood down Blood Alley. Alright, so we've just come down Blood Alley, or should I say officially known as Digbeth Street, off the market square, coming down here, filtering out onto Sheep Street. It's where the shepherds would have brought the sheep in from the fields and filtered them down those tubes, or tuiliers. But I'm stopping here outside what's now called the Porch House. What I can tell you, there's a little plaque over the doorway that says that is the oldest pub in England, dating from 947. I can also tell you that I know many towns and villages throughout the British Isles that claim to have the oldest pub in England. I will say I don't know any actually older than 947. That's Saxon's times. They've been selling liquor, beer there. Now, it was formerly called the Royalists, so when we arrived here to do some shooting a few days ago to see the name had changed, I was somewhat saddened really, because the Royalists not only shows that once upon a time that Stow was in favour of King Charles I, obviously with regards to the battle, but I've been talking to some local people who, again, also rather saddened that the name the Royalist is gone. But anyway, I suppose that's progress for you. The Porch House, the oldest pub in England. Alright, so before we actually head on out of town, other end of the market square, we've got some parking here. If you can find a spot, it's free for a couple of hours, which is good. Free's good, right? Restrooms over in the corner, 20p for a P. Remember, you know what you got to do. One goes in, the other one, your foot on it. That's the way to do it. Antiques here, some of the finest antiques in Britain, associated with Stow-on-the-Wold, where the wind blows cold. Up here, this fine building in the middle is the town hall, but also, very importantly, tourist information. Lovely lady in there called Soupy, more than happy to answer any questions and give plenty of advice. Greg and I are probably going to go for a cup of coffee at the old Stocks Inn over there, and then we're probably going to get out of town, because obviously, being foreigners of unsavoury appearance, I think we might be ending up in here. So on we go. That was Stow-on-the-Wold, where the wind blows cold, and I tell you, it really is today. Alright, well, we've decided to get into the middle of nowhere, have a little look-see around here at the Rollrights and the Rollright Stones. We look at that, views off into the distance over there. It seems to be the sun is trying to come out today, which is really nice. You get a good impression of that rolling Cotswold landscape. Again, those patchwork quilt effect of the fields, and the western edge of the Cotswolds way off in the distance. And some of you might want to go and explore actually Broadway and Chipping Campden, two pretty mighty, beautiful Cotswold towns. Down below us, we'll have the village of Long Compton. And this is quite relevant in the story and the legend of the Rollrights. Here we have in this field a 2000 BC stone monolith, an ancient monument. But the legend is that once upon a time it was a king and his knights, and they encountered a witch up here in these fields, and he announced to the witch, "If Long Compton I can see, King of England I shall be." The witch apparently turned around to him and said, "Ah, Long Compton you'll never see, and King of England you'll never be," and turned him and his knights into stone. So there's the king himself standing all alone, and we're just going to cross over the road into the other field to see if we can find his knights. So here are the king's men, his knights turned to stone by the witch. But in all reality, what we have here, the Rollright Stone Circle, is the easternmost prehistoric stone monument in Britain. As I said, thought to be round about 2000 BC. What was its purpose? Well, really, nobody's particularly sure. A bit like Stonehenge, really. It's always a permanent mystery. There are alignments to the lunar and solar cycles, that's for sure. theories bandying about, were they religious purposes, the gods, the stars, were they astrological calendars, sacrificial purposes? The mystery is always there, but you know, obviously very, very important to prehistoric man in this area, proving the fact there was probably a sizable community up here at the Rollrights. Okay, so we've arrived in the beautiful village of Great Chew, and in fact we're in School Lane. You can probably hear the school kids in the background. Actually, it's playtime, lunchtime. We're outside the Falkland Arms, beautiful old thatch pub. The Falkland Arms named after the Earls of Falkland, the Tanfield family. In fact, we were at their burial site at St John the Baptist Church in Burford yesterday, actually. Anyway, we're moving along here, looking at the thatch roofs above the pub itself, looking very, very tired indeed. You can see the mosses coming through, the chicken wire keeping it in places. You can see the thatch has actually sunk down beneath it. Alright, so here in the Cotswolds, in these beautiful and idyllic limestone cottages, there's two very distinct ways of roofing them. And here's a classic example right next door to each other. It's fantastic. Slate or thatch. Often asked the price about thatched roof. Well, it's not exactly a science, but let's say there are two different types of thatching material, two different types of straw they used. The wheat straw, the thinner, less expensive version, shorter lasting version, which most of these I'm pretty sure are the wheat straw. So let's take an example. This one here, that's quite a long roof. Now I would think that would be looking at 2 blocks. I would think that you're probably looking, that's wheat straw, about £50,000, I would think. If that was thatched in marsh reed straw, longer lasting, I think you'd be looking at close to 80-90 grand, I would think, something like that. Pays your money, you takes your choice. But obviously it's a wheat straw, you're going to get 20-25 years worth out of use it. You get the more expensive marsh reed straw, you're probably going to get 45, possibly 50 years out of it. So it's kind of take your pick. When you're buying a thatched cottage here in the Cotswolds, you're buying into the roof because you can't replace it. They're listed. Okay, and also you've got to consider about the insurance, fire premiums, and that sort of thing. So it's a commitment to get a thatched cottage. But if you really want to live in something quite as idyllic as this, like here at Great Chew, yeah, absolutely. Look at some work going on over there. But if we can find, if you could focus on that roof line for me there, can you see the cross hatches on the top, folks? We get that there. That's actually the thatcher's mark. The next cottage along, you probably get a clearer view there. Cross hatches at the thatcher's mark. So quite a distinctive style. But this one up here, if you pan round, there you'll see the same guy there, but it's a different style roof line there, indicating a different thatcher. We'll see more of that as we trawl through the Cotswolds. So that was Great Chew. Beautiful, isn't it? Okay, so we were driving along and then we saw something. We just had to stop and show you this. It really is a major feature of the Cotswold landscape. What they're known as the hedgerows. Fine example here of field division, but they're an ancient way of separating property and land and fields and things, and using the indigenous hedging materials. Blackthorn, whitethorn and hazel, planted at slightly different angles so they'll intermix, grow together, forming these impenetrable barriers. That is really a major feature of the landscape around here. Unfortunately, something happened in the 1970s when Britain joined something called the European Common Market, and directives were coming in from Europe to make the fields bigger, unifying the crops, and farming equipment got bigger and bigger. So the decision was taken back then to rip out all these hedgerows, some of which have been like there for hundreds and hundreds of years. There is a way of dating them actually. Apparently for every 10 different species of flora, fauna, wildlife, whatever, insect and things like that, for every 10 species that add on 100 years, and some of them were dated at like the sort of 80 species 800 years old. So several things happened when they were ripped out. Is that back in the 70s we weren't quite as ecologically sensitive as we are today, so a lot of these species lost their natural habitats and many became extinct, which was a terrible thing obviously. But a secondary problem, as you've probably noticed on our coverage today, is the fact up here in the Cotswolds we're pretty high up and there's wind. These also formed great windbreaks, so of course when it came out we had the added problem of soil erosion. The good news is now that a lot of the people got wise to this, so the hedgerows are coming back in, but it's going to take several generations to maybe reinstall this wildlife as that, but also to stop this soil erosion. But again, the hedgerows are a very, very important part of the Cotswold landscape. Well, here's the beauty of just rambling about through the Cotswolds, getting off the beaten track. It's amazing what you find. Discovered a field here. We won't see many sheep this far on this tour, but here a very, very interesting breed called the Herdwick sheep. They're born black. When they reach adolescence and maturity, they turn into this kind of brown colour, and as they get older, like the rest of us, they turn grey. The Herdwick sheep, interesting enough, were pioneered by a certain Beatrix Potter. She bred sheep up in the Lake District up in the north of England, and the Herdwicks was really kind of what she kind of really pushed forward. They particularly good wool and particularly good meat as well. So the Herdwick sheep. Get off the beaten track, see what you can find. Alright, so we've just pulled up in the village of Long Compton en route to Stratford-upon-Avon. We're in the churchyard of St Peter and St Paul here in Long Compton. And in the churchyard, obviously, we've got mighty Stow-on Tower, and obviously we've got yew trees. But most importantly, actually, we found this. One of the most prolific images of the Cotswold landscape are we talked about hedgerows before, but we're now talking about the dry stone wall, major feature of the Cotswold landscape. Dry stone, so called because the stones are held together, locked in place with keystones. There's no cement or mortar. Again, it's an ancient form of field division and very distinctive. You probably focus on the other side there, Greg. You see the large keystones every couple of yards or so. You'll notice that on the top row the stones are facing upward, sharp way. That would be to prevent the sheep from trying to clamber over. They catch the soft underbelly, they don't try it again. It's the distinct lads. But again, a great way of field division. But the question is, where do they get the stones from? Well, all around. So not only are you building a wall and a field division, you're clearing your pasture as well. So the dry stone walls, Cotswold landscape. Fine example indeed. Alright, so we're just leaving the church here, St Peter and St Paul in Long Compton, but impressive feature right there is the Lich Gate. You don't actually see many of these around. One, it's thatched, and secondly, there's a room above it. Now, there are a few in the Cotswolds, pretty hard to find, but this is one pretty well known. And they would build a room up there to put the coffin the night before the burial. Suspicion in this local area was the fact that if you put the bodies above ground, the spirits from the underworld could not come and take the souls away. So the Lich Gate at St Peter and St Paul in Long Compton. Okay, so we're up at Broadway Tower, high up on the Cotswold edge here. Great views from up here, so it's well worth a visit, I would say. Before we head actually up to the tower, we parked our vehicle here in the parking lot. You get up to it's £2. It gives you up to 4 hours up here. But if you do go into the coffee shop, you will, and you spend over £5, which is very easy to do actually. Go in there and they'll give you your parking back, which is very nice. And in there also you've got very clean, free bathrooms, which is good. Always an option for you, yeah. But a decent cup of coffee, as long as you're not in a rush. Alright, so fine view of Broadway Tower. In fact, what it is 18th century folly. Story behind it was built in 1798 by a rather eccentric and exceedingly rich landowner. Story has it he had two sizable estates, one either side of the Cotswold Ridge, and what he built it so he could simultaneously look at both estates. 1798, Georgian England, rich landowners, they're all a bit eccentric back in the days, probably too much port anyway. Interestingly, there's a lot of cool stuff up here as well. Sorry, meant to say, £8 to get in, up top, great views. Telescopes, 360 degrees, but also get you access just in front. You might be able to make out a mound, man walking his dog there, just left him a piece of outcrop there. Underneath that is a nuclear bunker. Wasn't expecting to see that today, I can tell you, but apparently it's built during the Cold War, back in the 50s and 60s. And here, find a quite poignant little memorial here, actually, folks. During World War II, 2nd of June 1943, 2:15 in the afternoon, a Lancaster, was it a bomber? Looks like a Lancaster bomber out on a training mission, crashed out here, and sadly 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the RAF boys were lost their lives. But it's a lot of interesting stuff. What we're actually on here is what's called the Cotswold Edge. It's this huge walk that comes up from Broadway right along the top. You can walk the ridge for miles and miles and miles, and as I said before, on a clear day, views are just off the charts crazy good. So here we are, Broadway Tower. Alright, so we've moved down off the Cotswold Ridge down into the beautiful village of Broadway. Probably the west, well, it is not probably, certainly the most western extreme of the edge of the Cotswolds, but it was important in its day. It was a major staging post for the London to Worcester coaches, mail coaches coming through Broadway. Quite a wide street, but it's a long straight line. So if you're coming down here, what I do is either drive or a slow stroll length. It's beautiful. You can see now we've finally got some sunshine now coming through. It's illuminating this gorgeous limestone. But we're sort of probably at the extreme western edge of Broadway. The fine walks right to the very top. In fact, there's a walk that will actually take you back up to Broadway Tower and the Cotswold Ridge there. Probably one of the Cotswolds' most famous pubs and hotels is the Ligon Arms. Building dating from the 17th century. Well worth a look inside for sure. The Ligon Arms. Now the Ligon, a family name of the Earls of Beauchamp or Beauchamp, and those of you with a literary interest might remember Brideshead Revisited by Evelyn Waugh. Well, it's said that William Ligon, the 7th Earl of Beauchamp, was the inspiration for Lord Marchmain and Brideshead Revisited. In fact, what he was a political mover and shaker at the beginning of the 20th century. But when his political enemies found out about his homosexuality, he was hounded out and went into self-imposed exile into Australia, where he eventually became governor of New South Wales. So anyway, the Ligon Arms here down in Broadway, beautiful, and probably one of the most affluent of the Cotswold villages, but that's Broadway. Okay, so we've just moved off the high street here in Broadway, looking out for logistical stuff, and we found you some decent parking. First, I should have mentioned before, really, but actually on the high street, you've got free parking for an hour if you can actually find a spot. That's the question. So if that's not the case, come down here. Municipal car park. It's cheap actually. It's about £1 an hour. It's safe, I think, by the looks of it. But importantly, look what we found. Free, clean bathrooms. All right, welcome to Chipping Campden. Beautiful sign there. A must-see visit whilst you're down here in the Cotswolds. Very, very important woolen town from medieval times, known as the gilded masterpiece of the Cotswolds. It's a fair size actually. You'd be surprised how big it is when you actually get down here. Beautiful honey-coloured limestone, again synonymous with this edge of the Cotswolds. But interesting enough, the word chipping, Old English, Saxon, literally means market. There's the market itself, the original, that's actually 17th century, but chipping, Old English for market. In fact, in this area, we've got several chippings. Obviously, Chipping Campden, where we are now, we're not too far from Chipping Norton last night, and of course, the Chipping Sodbury. So chipping markets. In fact, we still get the word cheap today. That's where the origins of that one come from. So chipping market. This market, we're going to pop in and actually have a look inside here momentarily, but okay, so we've got a nice profile here of the market itself and the war memorial and the village hall, but this actual structure dates from the early 1600s. But there's been a market here since really, I think it's the 12th century, the 1100s, I believe, and I suspect that some of the stonework is original. But interestingly enough, they've got a very strict bylaw here that's been in place since 17th century, I would think, probably even earlier, that no persons shall cause annoyance to others using the market hall for improper usage. So just remember that when you go. They don't take too kindly to that around these parts, you know. So Chipping Campden Market. All right, so we got some logistical information for you here in Chipping Campden. Coming by car, parking. Right, firstly, all along the High Street, all the way up to St James's Church. If you can get a spot in there, free. If you can find a parking spot just the other side of the village on the market square over there, 50p for an hour, 50 pence for an hour. That's pretty good value. Around the back, following the sign towards the coach parking area, the back ends, as it's called, behind St Catherine's Primary School, several free bays over there. So parking should be all right for the cover of that one. Bathrooms, we found some free ones. That's good. On the way out of town, on Sheep Street, just up on the left-hand side, are a couple of free ones, regularly serviced, clean, safe and tidy. If out of commission, but fear not. Inside the Visitor Information Centre, the courtyard at the back, there are several clean, nice bathrooms in there, but there's a 20p charge. So remember that old trick again. First one goes in, keep your foot on the door as the second one goes in, keep it going. So free bathrooms, 20p for a p. Chipping Campden. All right, well that's the end of the Cotswolds tour, our way, or the tour guide's travel guide's way. Hope you enjoyed it. Well, more importantly, hope you found it useful. Look, to be honest, you're getting an idea how big the Cotswolds are, vast. However, we do feel that we've given you a comprehensive insight into the, you know, the known success stories, but also we've given you a few gems and a couple of other alternative ideas to play around with. I mean, essentially what we're saying here, you don't have to stick to that route that we showed you. Make it let me go along. I mean, really, just get in the car. That's the whole idea. Get in the car with that map book. Plot your own routes about there. Get your country pub. Use that as your base for a couple of days. Just get out there and enjoy. Make sure you stop every so often, take some photographs. Just enjoy this beautiful green and pleasant land of ours that is our England and our Cotswolds. So thanks very much. I've been Rich Jones, the Tour Guide's Travel Guide. Keep following us via the website, YouTube, Facebook and the other social media sites for our other destinations and regularly updated information. Take care of yourselves.